what really got me into collecting was it was like being bitten by a bug and you know, scratching that itch. A couple of years ago, my girlfriend got me a portable Super Nintendo, and I really enjoyed playing the Super Nintendo games I had on it, but it also came bundled with an NES converter, so I could pop that in and play NES games. And at the time, I had exactly 30 games, and I would play that more than the Super Nintendo games. That really kickstarted my collecting overall. I had a couple of games. I always wanted more. I'd find out from friends who played a lot of these games back in the day where I was, you know, really too young to understand them. Out of nowhere, one day I was just like, I want a complete NES collection. And I started hitting a bunch of stores and telling them, like, hey, if I get a bunch of games, if I get like a bulk of like 20 games, can you knock a huge chunk off? And that is like, I guess that's kind of like a shopping addiction, I suppose, on top of like a video game addiction. I chose Nintendo because that's what I grew up with, but I never had a Sega. A kid I grew up, a friend of mine growing up, he had a Sega, so I was like, I want to play Sega, I'll go there. But when I'm home, I want to do my homework, you know, take my vitamins, say my prayers, and play Nintendo. My collection grew thanks to awesome store owners and awesome friends, always like helping me out and understanding my cause, so to speak, you know, or my purpose with it. I have like such a deep appreciation of it, and I try to convey this to people. So finding out about these games and playing them, and then years later acquiring them, that's what really, it was always like a thing in my mind to have a lot of games. But when I was younger, obviously I didn't have a job, I couldn't afford it and stuff like that, so I would like just emulate them. And I'd always have like a folder of like a want. That was the name of the folder. It was want, you know. So it was a whole bunch of games, like over 100 games that I wanted. And you know, however many years later this is now, I have most of those. There's still like a handful that I want, but they're pretty expensive. You know, just the memories of playing it in my basement when I was younger with like my brothers and never being able to beat them at a game. I love coming home and like sitting down and playing one of these games with my kid or something like that. You know, she picks a game off the shelf, I'll clean it with her, which is a whole other part of the collecting is maintaining, you know, and she helps me maintain them and stuff. So I want to be able to take a game off my shelf, blow into it real quick, pop it in the system, and it works. You know, that's how I want it. But this is a piece of gaming history that I want to have, that I want to be able to share with my kids. Like, you know, they'll see a new game. I remember being in a store one time at a plane trade in Yonkers when it was still around, and I was looking at a couple of NES games up there, and this kid was like, what are those? I'm like, oh, these are games from when I was younger. He's like, oh, the graphics suck. I was like, well played. You know, how am I going to retort to like a 6-year-old little piece of shit kid? You know? Where comments like that don't usually offend me, but he was just like, oh, that sucks. You know, meanwhile, he probably knows nothing about it, so it's forgivable. But it kind of struck a gear, like, do they really suck? Like, do I have a purpose? He just made me feel like I was just like alone in the universe, you know? Collection itself is comprised mostly of NES games. I have 441 NES games as of this. I have 62 NES games in box, which I never even wanted boxes, but that's a whole nother story. I have a handful of Nintendo 64 games, most of which from when I was younger. I think less than 20 of those. A bunch of Super Nintendo games I've gotten over the years, like Turtles in Time, Super Metroid, you know, the staples in that system. A lot of people go wild over like Chrono Trigger, but I was never into RPGs really. A handful of GameCube games, and I have one of each Game Boy, which I've put so much time and effort into to maintain them and keep them in good shape over the years, and started modifying them to put like, you know, backlit screens in them and stuff like that. And I have every Legend of Zelda game, so I'm a huge Zelda fan. I think I will never be done completing, you know, in terms of completing the NES collection, because having the cartridges is one thing, and then I'm thinking, okay, once I have about 670 or so, or maybe 675, so 677 total, I'm at 441. I have a bunch of boxes. I always come across boxes that are in good shape to at least take something I have loose and put it in a box, and then I'll have to acquire a manual. So I think after I have every cartridge, then I'll go for every box, and that will take forever and a day. So in terms of being done, that's the thing, I don't want to be done because it's something I enjoy doing.